Still Thursday, June 7th, 2022. I'm still Larissa. I'm going to read some more. In my kitchen on my table, Lenten Tales of Culinary Traditions by Larissa Dahroug. Chapter 4, Quiche, Frittata, and Baked French Toast. Here on the Kitty Pants Ranch, a big part of our family are feather kids, also known as the cluckers, Tootie Bird, Snooty Bird, Baby Cakes, and Fluffernutter. We love these sweet beings and are grateful for the amazing fresh eggs they provide most of the year round. In cooler months, they tend to not lay as much, but that's okay. We love them not just for their eggs, but for their individuality and unique personalities. Here on the Kitty Pants Ranch, we don't eat or prepare chicken. That would be horrendous. Unless you're talking about communion, you don't eat your family. But eggs are another story, and you just can't talk about Easter and Lent without talking about eggs. Eggs can be prepared in so many ways. Few foods are as versatile as the mighty little egg. They are also nutritious and delicious. As a symbol of life and rebirth, the egg is synonymous with Lent and Easter. When I was a little girl, my father spent many a Lenten hour making pisanki, or Ukrainian eggs. These eggs are a traditional art form with a long history, not just associated with Easter. Traditional Ukrainian egg art motifs and designs have long-standing meanings and stories behind them. The process is similar to batik fabric dyeing and is a meditative spiritual practice. Designs feature geometric interlocking patterns, often incorporating flowers and leaves, sometimes surrounding a central scene or image. Beeswax is applied using a tool called a kistka, not to be confused with a kishka, which is a soup bone, creating a negative image. Then the egg is dipped in dye. Once the dye has set and dried, more wax is applied to the areas to remain the chosen color. Then the egg is dipped in the next color. Patterns must be carefully considered in order to achieve the colors. The colors must be applied lightest to darkest. Once the design is complete, the wax is carefully removed and the egg is blown out of the shell through a very small hole. Some pisanka, singular form of pisanki, artists opt to decorate wooden eggs with paints rather than the traditional method. It's easier and you don't run the risk of destroying something that may have taken a week to finish. I haven't tried making pisanki for quite some time. Perhaps next year pisanki will find their way into my Lenten observation. This year I will stick to plain old hard-boiled eggs and delicious egg-based dishes like quiche, frittata, and baked French toast. Quiche is something many home cooks find daunting. The thought of making a pie crust in the morning can be scary if it's not something you do often. Honestly, my sister got my mom's touch for pastry. My crust always tastes good, but aren't usually pretty. I've always admired my sister's and mother's skill at making beautiful fluted edges, patterns, and crumbles. The pies we always had for Easter and other holidays were beautiful and delicious. If you are eating my pastry, you will just have to settle for delicious. Quiche was not something I grew up eating. No one in my family made them that I knew of. I started making quiche early in my marriage because quiche is delicious, not really that hard to make, and a great option for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Traditionally, a quiche has a pastry crust, but you don't need to do that. Sometimes I simply oil my pie plate and dust it with a mixture of cornmeal and flour, then pour in the filling and bake. But really, it's better with a crust. My quiche may not be authentically French, but it tastes good and keeps well in the refrigerator. So here's how you make it. Ingredients: 1.5 to 2 cups of pastry flour. Pastry flour is finer ground than all-purpose or bread flour and makes a superior crust, in my opinion. 2 tablespoons unsalted Irish butter. Growing up, my mother used Crisco, but I choose to make a butter crust. It must be Irish butter, and it must be unsalted. Other butters aren't the same. Half a teaspoon of salt, a few tablespoons of ice-cold water. The humidity in your kitchen will affect how much water you need. 6 fresh eggs, 1 cup whole milk, 2 tablespoons all-purpose flour, 2 cups grated cheese of your choice, 5 fresh button mushrooms sliced, 1 medium shallot sliced, 2 cups chopped fresh spinach, 1 teaspoon fresh dried thyme, half a teaspoon garlic powder, 1 tablespoon dried parsley, salt and pepper to taste. Directions. Start with the crust. In a large mixing bowl, sift 1½ to 2 cups of pastry flour. How much you use depends on how big your pie dish is. Sprinkle the flour with salt and cut the butter into small pats, dropping it into the flour. Using a pastry cutter or your fingers, work the butter into the flour until you have consistent crumbles. Add 1 tablespoon of water and begin to work the dough together into a ball. Add the water 1 tablespoon at a time until the dough just comes together. You don't want soggy or sticky dough. Allow the dough to rest for a couple of minutes while you find your wax paper and rolling pin. Cover your work surface with the wax paper. Place the ball of dough in the center of the wax paper covered surface. You will need 2 pieces of wax paper slightly overlapping to have a surface wide enough for the crust once it's rolled all the way out. Cover the ball with another layer of wax paper and press flat. Using a tapered rolling pin, roll the dough into a round shape between the wax paper. You may choose to flip the dough and roll from both sides. This is easy to do when you are working between wax paper. Don't overwork the dough. Too much handling will melt the butter and make the dough impossible to remove from between the wax paper sheets. Once the dough is about ½ an inch wider than the outside diameter of the pie pan, remove the top layer of the wax paper and gently place the crust centered over the pan. Gently press the crust into the bottom of the pie pan and peel away the remaining layer of wax paper. Finish the edges of the crust as you like. I left my edges rough because I can never seem to make them look pretty anyway. Preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit and put the crust in the refrigerator while you begin the filling. Grate your cheese. I like to use a combination. In the quiche in the photo, I use a combination of Havarti and Swiss. Chop your spinach, shallots, and mushrooms and add it to the bowl with the cheese. You can use other veggies if you want. If you're going to use broccoli, I suggest quickly blanching it beforehand. Ultimately, you want a total of 4 cups of filling, including your cheese and your veggies. Place the filling into the crust that has chilled in the refrigerator and set it aside. In the same bowl, you mixed your cheese and veggies. Now crack 5 or 6 fresh eggs, depends on the size of the eggs. Add the milk, spices, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, salt, and pepper, and whisk very well until bubbles start to form. Pour this over the veggies and cheese, allowing the wet mixture to settle into all the crevices. Bake for 45 minutes or until the center is firm. Allow to cool for 10 minutes before serving with coffee and juice and/or mimosa or Bloody Mary. This recipe serves up to 6. You can stretch it to 8 if you also serve a fresh fruit or a simple salad, such as greens and a vinaigrette. The Italian equivalent of the quiche is the frittata. No one in my family ever made one for me, but my pappy said his mother frequently made frittata. A frittata is a baked egg dish with a potato crust that is started on the stovetop and finished in the oven. It is traditionally prepared using a cast iron skillet. I started making frittata around the same time as I started making quiches. Sometimes I make a potato crust pressed into a pie pan. I bake the potato crust until crispy, add the egg and the veggie filling, and bake again until it's firm in the center. I call the combination a quittata, but really, frittata is best when made the right way. It takes more eggs than the quiche and has a very different texture when finished. It can have any number of veggies in it, but most commonly I have found artichokes, mushrooms, peppers, and onions. Of course, many people make this with sausage, bacon, or ham as well. I have used sausage substitute products, but prefer my results without it. So this is how you make my frittata. Ingredients: 1 large russet potato or 2 medium-sized red skin potatoes grated, 3 cloves of garlic minced, 1 large shallot or red torpedo onion sliced thin, 6 fresh button mushrooms, 2 fresh sweet Italian red peppers chopped medium, 1 small jar marinated artichoke hearts drained and chopped, 1/4 cup Parmesan cheese, half a cup ricotta cheese, 1 teaspoon dried oregano, salt and pepper to taste, and olive oil. Directions: wash and grate your potatoes, leaving on the skins. Sprinkle with half a teaspoon of salt and stir together. Allow to sit covered for 5 to 10 minutes. While the potato is resting, prepare the other veggies and garlic, mixing them in another bowl, and set them aside. Preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Now squeeze all the liquid from the potatoes that you can. You can keep the potato water with the residual starch in a jar in the refrigerator to use in soup or some other dish in the next 2 days. Bring your deep-sided cast iron skillet up to temperature over medium-high heat. Add a couple tablespoons of olive oil to the pan and add the grated potato. You are basically making hash browns, but you aren't going to cook them all the way, only about halfway or a bit more than that. Remove the cast iron skillet from the flame and press the potato to fully cover the bottom of the pan. Add the chopped veggies and garlic, covering the potato. In a mixing bowl, crack your eggs and whisk together with the ricotta, oregano, salt, and pepper to taste. This dish has more of an omelet or scrambled egg texture compared to the quiche, which is a bit more custard-like. Fresh eggs make all the difference in flavor. When bringing in eggs from chickens, be sure to use any that might be cracked first, so as not to waste them. Sometimes the egg will get cracked falling from the hen's rear. It's fine as long as the crack isn't oozing and you use it right away. Pour this over the veggies in the skillet. Sprinkle the top with the Parmesan cheese. Bake uncovered in the oven until the center is firm, usually between 30 and 45 minutes. Allow to cool for 5 to 10 minutes before flipping out onto a plate and serving potato side up. Serve with fresh fruit or garnished with arugula and shaved fennel, toast and prosecco, or a Bellini. This recipe serves up to 6. Where there's homemade bread and fresh eggs, you are sure to find French toast. When you bake bread weekly, there's bound to be some stale ends of loaves from time to time, and if it happens to be half a loaf, it'll make more croutons or breadcrumbs than you need on a daily basis. Some people are offended by the idea of a breakfast meal for dinner, but really, who makes these rules anyway? Why not have a quiche or frittata or a French toast for dinner? My father is anything but what you would call a picky eater. He is quite the omnivore, and I've never seen him turn his nose up at anything he's offered. Growing up, however, there was one thing my father never wanted on his table: breakfast for dinner. I don't know why. I clearly remember once, as a very little girl, in the first house my parents bought, an almost 100-year-old at the time house in the old whistle-stop town of Pitcairn, Pennsylvania, my father coming home from work on the railroad to French toast, scrambled eggs, and bacon for dinner. I was excited. I loved my mother's French toast, and it seemed to me like a special treat to have it for dinner. My father did not agree. It is the only time I ever heard my father complain in any way about my mother's cooking. I remember my mother cried, and we never had breakfast for dinner again. Omar and I are not my father and mother. We chickens enjoy breakfast for dinner from time to time, and French toast is a winner. My French toast is different from my mother's. She always used store-bought bread and shallow fried it in a pan on the stove. The French toast I make is kind of a cross between bread pudding and traditional French toast. So this is how you make it. Ingredients: 4 thick slices of slightly stale homemade bread. It is important for the bread to be slightly stale, otherwise it's just mushy. You most certainly don't want to use fresh bread. 2/3 cup whole milk, 3 large fresh eggs, 1/4 cup brown sugar, 1 shot of frangelico, 1/4 teaspoon ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon ground ginger, 4 tablespoons of butter, oh no, I think there might be somebody up there. Better have 4 legs. Better have 4 legs. Four tablespoons of butter, 1 tart crisp apple, cored, sliced, and with the skin on, a wedge of brie cheese, vegetarian sausage substitute. I particularly like Morningstar brand patties. Fresh berries washed and drained, handful of fresh mint leaves, chopped coarse, real maple syrup, a bottle of Chenin Blanc. Directions: in a large mixing bowl, crack the eggs and whisk together with the milk, frangelico, brown sugar, cinnamon, and ginger. In a shallow casserole dish, put a few pats of butter and arrange the bread and the apple slices in a slightly overlapping fashion. Pour the egg and milk mixture over the bread and top with pats of remaining butter. Cover with foil and set aside. Turn on the oven to preheat to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Lightly toss the berries with the chopped mint and set aside. Cut 2 small wedges of the brie and set aside. Bake the French toast covered for 25 minutes. Finish baking uncovered for 8 to 10 more minutes or until the top is slightly crisp. Prepare the sausage substitute while the French toast is finishing. Plate the French toast with a side of berries, brie wedge, and sausage substitute, and drizzle with maple syrup. Serve with a glass of Chenin Blanc. This recipe serves 2 people. It can be easily adapted to serve larger groups, and fresh baked bread can be made stale by slicing and baking at a very low temperature slowly in the oven before using. Another variation is to cut the stale bread and apples into large cubes and spread it into the pan. This will give you a more bread pudding-like dish. You may also choose to add raisins, dried cherries, dried apricots, dried currants, and or walnuts. Frangelico is an Italian hazelnut liqueur. If that doesn't suit your fancy, you can replace it with vanilla extract. Well, let's move on. Next one. Chapter 5, Lentil Soup, Fool, Hummus, and Herrera. As I mentioned before, my husband's father was born in Egypt and was Muslim. Omar's mother was born in England and raised Anglican. She later converted to Jehovah's Witness and then to Islam to marry Omar's father. In all honesty, I don't really know what, if anything, my husband's mother believes or doesn't believe in. Her life, as far as I can see, has been one big trail of contradictions and outright lies. I know very little about her first husband, the father of Omar's two much older half-brothers, other than he cheated on her repeatedly, was a jazz musician, and the two partied a lot. She showed me photos of him once and told me the story of how they became engaged. Years later, memory of the story she told me prompted me to take her to a staging of the vagina monologues. I don't know if she enjoyed the show, but I am pretty sure it moved her on some deep level. She was thoughtful and quiet for the rest of the evening, something that is not common to her personality. My husband's mother is not the best cook, at least she hasn't been since I've known her. Muhammad was very picky and, of course, observed an Islamic diet free of pork and alcohol. While my husband's mother mostly kept away from pork, she has never had a problem drinking alcohol. When I compiled my original cookbook and requested specific recipes from people, I wanted to include Omar's family as well. His father did much of the cooking whenever we visited them or we went out for dinner. Sheila did very little in the kitchen other than make tea or coffee, but there was one dish in particular I requested of her, her lentil soup. It was the one thing she had made and I had sincerely enjoyed, and Omar had told me about it before she made it for us. I also asked Muhammad for a couple of the recipes he made, but he never had the time to write things like that down. It wasn't until years later, when we moved to Santa Rosa, California, that he finally shared a couple recipes he said his mother used to make when he was a boy in Egypt. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Right now I'm talking about lentil soup. Lentils are a lovely legume. Lentil soup is a very common dish across the Silk Route, and some version of it can be found in most Mediterranean and or Middle Eastern restaurant menus. Usually it's vegetarian, but sometimes it is made with chicken stock. I enjoy lentils very much. I don't make Sheila's recipe, but the soup I make is similar to hers. The biggest thing I learned from her about making lentil soup is that it is important to fry the spices to begin with. Lentil soup is hearty and satisfying, and paired with fresh baked bread and a salad, it's a perfect choice for a Lenten meal. So this is how you make it. Ingredients: 2 cups of brown lentils rinsed, 1 stick unsalted butter, 1 cinnamon stick, 2 whole cloves, 1 teaspoon ground cumin, 1 teaspoon ground turmeric, 1 teaspoon ground ginger, 1 teaspoon black pepper, 1 teaspoon ground coriander, 1 teaspoon dried thyme, 1 teaspoon paprika, 1 bay leaf, 4 cloves garlic minced fine, 5 stalks celery with leaves chopped coarse, 2 carrots chopped coarse, 1 medium-sized potato diced, 1 large white onion diced, 4 ripe Roma tomatoes, 1 bunch fresh cilantro chopped coarse, salt to taste, enough water, a bottle of Chardonnay, and a loaf of fresh baked bread. He's sensitive. Directions. In a heavy bottom souped pot, put the butter, cinnamon stick, cloves, cumin, turmeric, ginger, black pepper, coriander, paprika, and bay leaf. Sauté over medium-high heat until the oils start to release and the spices become fragrant, but be careful not to burn them. Reduce the heat to medium and add the uncooked rinsed lentils, onion, and garlic. Stir occasionally until the onions start to soften. Add the thyme, celery, carrots, potato, and some salt and enough water to cover the lentil and veggie mixture with 2 to 3 inches on top. Cover and allow to simmer until the lentils become tender. Once the lentils are tender, add the tomato and taste for salt. Turn the heat up slightly and bring to a boil until the tomatoes pop and start to become loose. Once the tomatoes are soft and cooked well, taste once more for salt and add the chopped cilantro. Serve immediately with fresh baked bread, side salad of your choice, and a glass of Chardonnay. This recipe serves up to 6. You can adjust the spices to suit your palate. The cinnamon surprises some folks. It is important to wait to add the tomatoes until the lentils are done to your liking. The acid in the tomatoes will stop the lentils from softening further. The dish can also be prepared by putting everything, tomatoes included, into an instant pot or other pressure cooker. The flavor is not quite the same because the spices are not fried to begin with, but it is still quite good and is ready very quickly. After we moved to Santa Rosa, California from Sunnyvale, California, Omar's parents decided to come visit. It was over the Lenten season, and I wanted to surprise his father by preparing a traditional Egyptian dish. The last time they had come to visit, we were still living in Sunnyvale. There were a number of Middle Eastern restaurants in the area, and Mohammed had enjoyed one in particular very, very much, Dish Dash. He enjoyed it so much that we went there 3 nights in a row. He said many of the dishes were the same or very similar to dishes he had growing up. He explained a dishdasha was a woman's garment. The restaurant had one framed and hanging on the wall. I did a little research. It was Lent after all, so I wanted to find a vegetarian recipe that didn't seem too difficult to improve my chances of success. I knew of a few Middle Eastern dishes that were vegetarian, but not specifically Egyptian. After some searching, I came across something called foul medames, or simply foul, the national dish of Egypt. I mentioned the dish to Omar, and to my delight, he knew of it. In fact, he had memories of his father making it for him for lunch when he was a child. I was pleased. There were many recipes online for the dish. Every woman had her own way of doing it and spices they swore by. After reading through dozens of versions, I picked out the most common steps and ingredients and made my own version. I tested it on Omar in the week before his parents arrived. He said it was a little fancier than what his father had made, but it was good and the flavors accurate. I decided I would make it for dinner the first night of their visit with rice and tabbouleh. Tabbouleh is a common salad throughout the Mediterranean and Middle East. It is made of a large amount of fresh parsley and mint chopped fine together and mixed with minced red onion, cooked and cooled cracked bulgur wheat, minced fresh garlic, dried sumac, salt, pepper, olive oil, and fresh lemon juice. Sometimes finely chopped tomato and cucumber are mixed through as well, but if you do that, it doesn't keep overnight. Anyway, Mohammed was pleased and confirmed Omar's evaluation that my version of fool was fancier than his, but was still good. He said it is a food commonly sold by street vendors in Egypt to people on their way to work in the mornings or for lunch, so this is how you make it. Ingredients: 1 large can of fava beans, drained and rinsed. You can use fresh ones as well, but this adds quite a few steps. The beans need to be shelled and blanched first. Canned favas are reddish-brown in color, and fresh ones are a verdant green. 1 head garlic minced fine, olive oil, 1 large shallot diced, 1 medium potato cubed with the skin still on, 1 tablespoon dried oregano, half a teaspoon of ground cumin, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, 2 Roma tomatoes diced and seeds removed, juice of 2 fresh lemons, 3 tablespoons unsalted tahini, salt and pepper to taste, 1 bunch cilantro, chopped medium, salad of your choice, mango juice, and Pinot Grigio. Directions: in a large frying pan, put 4 tablespoons or so of olive oil, the shallot, potato, cumin, and ginger. Sauté over medium-high heat until the potatoes are nearly done. Continually stir so not to burn the shallots. Then add the fava beans, garlic, oregano, tomatoes, and salt and pepper. Stir over medium-high heat until the tomatoes start to soften, then reduce the heat and cover the pan, allowing it to simmer until the potatoes are totally tender and the tomatoes have broken down. Add the tahini and stir it through. Tahini is very stiff, and you need to include some of the oil as well. You want it mixed through very well before you add the lemon, because the lemon mixed with the tahini causes emulsification. Add the lemon and taste for salt. Adjust the salt as needed, then stir through the cilantro. Serve immediately with white rice, salad of your choice, flatbread, and mango juice mixed with a shot of a light white wine, like a Pinot Grigio. This can also be served as a wrap, especially if you happen to be able to find fresh lavash bread. I have never made lavash, and it's not that great once it's stale. Look for it in Middle Eastern, Turkish, or Armenian marketplaces. The wrap can be packaged like a burrito in foil and taken easily on the go. This recipe serves 4 people. Fava beans are wonderful for many reasons. The beans are nutritious and delicious, and the plant is a traditional cover crop used for healing barren or stripped soils. In order to use fava beans as a cover crop, the plant must be cut down as soon as the flowers bloom. Otherwise, the plant will begin to pool the food stores it deposited in the surrounding soil to feed the growing beans. Fava bean stalks can be used as fill in livestock feed as well as thatch for compost piles or mulched back into the ground. After the success of my fool, Muhammad decided to share with me some recipes he remembered from childhood. One was a beef stew of sorts, with lots of onion, potato, tomato paste, and hot chilies. The trick to the dish is squeezing the onions with salt. The dish had 5 medium-sized white onions sliced very thin. Squeezing the sliced onions with salt starts the cooking process as well as makes your eyes tear up like crazy. The cubed beef and potatoes are then tossed with a generous amount of olive oil, minced fresh garlic, black pepper, and the onions with all their juices. Then the mixture is poured into a baking dish and whole hot peppers are stuffed in random spots. We used fresh serrano peppers because he said that was the closest thing at the market to the Egyptian pepper. He told me its name in Arabic, but I couldn't tell you what it was. Then a can of tomato paste is mixed with 2 cans of water and poured over the dish. It's covered with foil and baked in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit until the beef is tender and breaks apart. I haven't made this in years since giving up beef, but it was certainly delicious. The other thing he decided to teach me was hummus. I had been making it wrong. I knew mine didn't taste quite right, but I wasn't sure why. I had based my hummus on an Italian white bean dip. They are very similar, but there is a huge difference. That difference is tahini. Tahini is sesame seed butter. Some people claim it is delicious used as a peanut butter substitute, but I disagree. Tahini by itself makes my mouth feel dry. Mixed into recipes, however, it is a game changer. When making hummus, a chemical reaction happens between the tahini, lemon juice, and water. If you don't put things together in the right order or in the right proportion, it won't turn out right. But ultimately, the texture and flavor of your hummus is up to you. It's a matter of taste. I like mine thick and smooth, but I have had thinner, almost sauce-like hummus, and it was very good as well. And of course, you can add other things in for extra flavor, like roasted sweet red peppers, oregano, or even chopped olives. I don't do any of that. So this is how Muhammad taught me to make it. Ingredients: 1 can of chickpeas, aka garbanzo beans, with half of the water drained off of them. 4 cloves of fresh garlic, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, juice of 2 to 3 fresh lemons, enough tahini, enough water, salt to taste, extra olive oil and dried sumac. Get out your food processor. Traditionally, this is made using a large stone mortar and pestle, but I don't have one big enough. The largest one I have is only 6 inches in diameter. Besides, the food processor is so much faster. Into your food processor, add the half-drained chickpeas, garlic, and 2 tablespoons olive oil. Pulse until as smooth as possible. Add the lemon juice and pulse again until it's all incorporated. Start with 1 tablespoon of tahini and 1 tablespoon of water. Add this and pulse until it's incorporated, then check for consistency. Continue to add 1 tablespoon of each at a time and pulse until you have the consistency you desire. Then add salt and pepper to taste and pulse through once more. Scoop into the center of a large dish, making a well at the center. Fill the well halfway with olive oil and sprinkle with dried sumac. Arrange by surrounding with wedges of fresh flatbread, fresh cut veggies like cucumber or bell pepper or pita chips, and enjoy. Better have 4 legs. Better have 4 legs. This recipe is an appetizer. It makes about 1.5 cups or so of hummus. You can also alter the recipe by using roasted garlic. Roasted garlic is much sweeter and softer. Fresh garlic will give a spiciness to the hummus. You can really add as much garlic as you like. As far as I'm concerned, it's pretty hard to add too much garlic to anything. Hummus is also wonderful used as a sandwich spread, and, in case you were wondering, this recipe can very easily be altered to make baba ganoush. Baba ganoush translates to Big Daddy. Basically, follow the recipe exactly, but instead of chickpeas, use 2 large oblong eggplants, not the thin ones, that have been barbecued whole until soft and the skin blackened. Remove the skin before adding them to the food processor. Finally, let's talk about Herrera. Herrera is a dish associated with the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. Muhammad never taught me how to make this dish, but he did mention it to me in passing. Muhammad described the month of Ramadan as a time when the veil between the worlds is most thin and the spirits are closest. It's a time of fasting when Muslims are asked to engage in introspection and offer alms to appease God so as not to be tormented by angels or demons. There's somebody up on my hill. Because the Islamic faith follows a strictly lunar calendar, the month, followed by the Eid, holy celebration, moves around from year to year. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims who are able observe fasting from sunrise to sunset, taking no food or drink. Herrera is the dish made to traditionally break the day's fast. It is a mixed bean soup and is meant to offer only the necessity of nutrition. These traditions and ideas are very congruent with Catholic practices and observations of Lent, All Saints' Day, and All Souls' Day. I learned to make the dish out of curiosity. It's perfect for a Lenten meal, and guess what? It is delicious. So, this is how you make it. Ingredients: 1 can of chickpeas, aka garbanzo beans, drained and rinsed. 2 cups red lentils rinsed. 1 can of fava beans, drained and rinsed. 1 large red onion diced. 2 carrots chopped coarse. 3 stalks of celery with leaves chopped coarse. 4 tablespoons of olive oil. 1 tablespoon of coriander seed. 1 tablespoon of ground turmeric. 1-inch piece of fresh ginger grated. 1 head of garlic minced fine. 1 cinnamon stick. 1 bay leaf. 2 whole star anise pods. 4 whole cloves. 1 tablespoon Berber chili or crushed red pepper flakes, 1 tablespoon fenugreek leaves, 1 tablespoon dried oregano, 1/4 cup chopped fresh flat leaf parsley, half a cup long grain white rice rinsed, 1 jar diced tomatoes, enough water, salt and pepper to taste, a generous pinch of saffron threads, 1 bunch of cilantro chopped coarse. Directions: in a deep soup pot, put the olive oil, coriander, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, bay leaf, star anise, Berber chili, cloves, and red lentils. Stir over medium-high heat until the spices become fragrant. Add the onion, carrot, celery, and stir constantly for 5 more minutes. Add the chickpeas, fava beans, garlic, fenugreek, oregano, and diced tomatoes. Stir together well, then fill the tomato jar 3 times with water and add that too. Stir and cover and bring to a boil. Once the red lentils begin to disappear, taste and add salt and pepper. Then add the rice, reduce heat, cover and allow to simmer, checking periodically. Once the rice is tender, taste and adjust the salt, then stir in the saffron and cilantro. Serve immediately with fresh baked bread and salad of your choice. Since this is a traditionally Islamic dish, I will not suggest a wine, but if you choose to have one, drink whatever you like. The Sufis often speak of being drunk on the beloved. With bread and salad, this recipe serves 6 to 8. It is good. It's a really good pot of soup. It is. It's probably my favorite bean soup. So I make it. I make it a couple times a year. It's good. Somebody up there on my property. He's all upset. He's going to want to sit on me now. Let me go in the house. I was going to lay down out here on the bench and take a nap in the sunshine, but not with creepy creeper creeping around. Not with creepy creeper creeping around.